And today we've got a presentation titled Resilience Lite Strategies for Staying Emotionally Healthy, because this is I can say this as a psychologist, it's good for people to be emotionally healthy. And it's hard and becoming increasingly harder for people to remain emotionally healthy. In fact, interestingly, this 2 weeks ago, the American Psychological Association released its annual stress survey, read data, which showed that Americans are reporting higher levels of stress than they've ever in the recorded history of the survey, which is an interesting thing. And as so that's a sample of Americans. It's interesting that you'd have grad students as a subpopulation of all humanity, also known as a kind of a stressful time in people's lives. And so I think this is a really well-timed thing. And let me introduce our two speakers. Justin Barker is a licensed clinical psychologist and works for the Counseling Center, Counseling and Psychological Services Center. And Amanda Bloom is a grad student still in psychology, and they're going to present today. Afterwards, we're going to have a workshop led by some of the RGS team. And so I'm going to turn the time over to them and let this happen. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for that introduction. Really excited to be here with you guys today. She is a grad student, I've been a grad student, so I can relate to you very well. So originally we were going to talk only about resilience, but today we're going to talk about a couple of different things and then resilience. I want to start out by really focusing on some things that I think are important for us as graduate students to our success, not only as graduate students, but also as human beings, as Dr. Bates pointed out. So,
do you want it?
Sure, thank you. All right, so when I was in graduate school, I had a great supervisor. At the time, I was working, doing graduate school. I also was involved with a lot of extracurricular things outside of graduate school, and at the same time doing a practicum at the Loyola University in Maryland Counseling Center. And I think my supervisor must have perceived that I was stressed, because he asked me how I was doing. I said, fine. But how are you really doing? and at that point, it was really nice because I felt really heard and supported by him. And I told him, I said, well, you know, honestly, having a hard time. Graduate school's tough. I'm working, I'm in school, my wife just had a baby, and got responsibilities with my church group, and all of these things. And at the same time, doing a practicum at the Loyola University Counseling Center. And he said some words of advice that I'll never forget. He said to me that, you know, because I'm a psychologist, or I was a psychologist in training, I wanted to help people. I want to be able to make other people's lives better. And this is maybe not that profound for you guys, but for me in that moment, it was really profound. He said, you know, if you want to take care of other people, you have to take care of yourself first. And for whatever reason, that just was like, oh, it makes complete sense. Because the way he described it is like if you have a glass of water and you constantly go around and you give your water to everybody else, at some point you have no water left in your cup. And at that point in my graduate training, I think my cup was almost empty. I was feeling the burn, as they say, from graduate school. And so from that time forward, I really made a conscious effort to live a more balanced life. And I know it's easy for us to say that as the psychologist standing up here, and you being in graduate school and having all of these demands, but I do really believe that you could do that you could find that balance. So some of you may recognize this guy, kind of famous in our field, right? Sigmund Freud. How Freud relates to this is that I was fortunate enough to do a training back east at Loyola with the New York Freudian Society. And that was really cool. I'm not here to say that I'm a psychoanalyst, because I'm not. But I really enjoyed that experience. And one of the things that that we learned about was some of Freud's ideas about how we be healthy human beings. And a quote that he said that has stuck with me also since graduate school was that he said that the cornerstones to humanness are work and love. So from your perspective, what do you guys think? What did Freud mean by that? The cornerstones to humanness are work and love. Any thoughts about what that means?
I think work and love are two of the things that make me feel the most fulfilled. So those relationships I have, regardless of who it's with, and as well as when I'm being productive with my work and schooling. I don't know. I feel more accomplished and more self-confident about my abilities to do certain tasks.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I believe. Freud also realized that for a lot of us, well, the places that we find meaning in life, places where we find our purpose, oftentimes is within our work and love. So when he says love, what do you think he means by that? It's gonna have something to do with his mother, right? What do you guys think? Maybe Heather didn't tell you guys this is interactive. It is, so I'm telling you now. Okay.
Just thinking about Freud's work. Likely, he talks about love with yourself, love with parent, and love with a significant other. So
Yeah.
I would say a multitude of relationships.
100% agree with that. So my interpretation of that quote is not that it's just your romantic partner, but that love is an essential component. Love with multiple types of people is an essential component of being a healthy human being. It is one of the cornerstones of being human. The one thing that I would differ with Freud on, or not I would differ, but what I would add to Freud, I would say that work, love, and play are the cornerstones to humanness. Because what I've found is that when we're all work and no play, you guys know where I'm going with this? You've seen the movie, who's seen the movie? All work, no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? The Shining. Yeah, that's right. The Shining is, I just dated myself. It's probably from at least the 80s, maybe the 70s. Jack Nicholson, a long time ago. Anyway, good movie. So work, love, and play, I think that is the balance that we must strive for in order for us to be more healthy. Any thoughts, Amanda, before we move forward?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've struggled with the most in graduate school is self-love. Just taking time to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, like even like eating healthy, sleeping right, those things, because I will make time for like my family or my friends, but I often don't. Like I'll skip the things that would make me just like feel more nourished and be able to take care of other people better, and it makes me more efficient when I'm working if I take breaks. So the self-love is probably what I focus the most on in grad school.
Which is a great thing to do. We do oftentimes, working at the counseling center, we do work with graduate students regularly. And what we find all the time is that graduate students are so busy. They have so many things on their plate. And they leave that self-love part out. They don't take care of themselves. They are investing themselves in so many different areas that they forget about the important things to them. And it leads to a whole lot of this, which is stress. You guys all know what stress is. What I find to be interesting about stress, the term stress actually was not a real thing until about the 1950s. The word was invented. But before that time, there was no sort of conceptualization of this idea of stress. But now it's very clear, as Dr. Bates pointed out, APA just released their report on stress and how we handle stress. Stress is this idea that somehow we fail to respond to, or we fail to respond appropriately to things in our environment, especially the emotional or physical, that are either actual threats or imagined threats. So what does that mean, imagined threats? What are we talking about when we say an imagined threat?
I guess for me, it's like a self-made concept. So like say a deadline, I'm not going to be physically harmed if I don't meet this deadline,
Right?
but still like there's a stress involved.
Absolutely, big stress. Yeah. Other thoughts about what the imagined threat would be? Yeah, please.
Think of imposter syndrome and the idea.
Yes!
I don't really belong here, so you put that stress on yourself.
Yeah. These guys are all smarter than me. How did I get into this program, right? I can relate to that. Absolutely. Others?
I think it could be unrealistic expectations for
Yes.
yourself and what you're supposed to do.
Ever hear the phrase B equals PhD? Yeah. Right? Right? It is true that sometimes we have these expectations, especially those who get into graduate school. You guys are the cream of the crop. You got into graduate school because you are the best of the best. That's how you get into graduate school. So you didn't get there by being a slacker. You got there because you worked really hard. Because some of you, maybe, venturing guess, may have some perfectionistic tendencies. Maybe? What? No, us? No, never. My guess is many of you have perfectionistic tendencies. We would call those imagined threats, right? These irrational, illogical ideas that you have about how you should be and shouldn't be performing. So you guys have heard of maybe Albert Ellis? Anybody heard of Albert Ellis? So Albert Ellis is a psychologist who developed a theory of emotional disorders. And what he said is that oftentimes we get caught up in the way that we think about things, right? That our thoughts lead to discomforting or disabling emotional responses. And the way that he talked about it was that oftentimes we get into this, the tyranny of the shoulds, right? I should do this, I should do that. Or he says sometimes we masturbate on ourselves, right? I must do this, I must do that. How many of you guys get caught up in the shoulds and the musts? Aha, yeah, she's like, yeah, I do. No, I do too. And this is a problem. It's a perceived or an imagined threat. The truth is that you don't have to get straight A's in graduate school to be great. You can be a great whatever it is you're pursuing and trying to become without getting straight A's. Now, some of you are looking like, this guy's crazy. There's no way. I'm getting straight A's. I don't care what he says. But again, thinking about what are some of the imagined threats in your lives that truly are not threats. We deal with this all of the time. How do you see this happening with the clients that you work with?
Yeah, especially with graduate students. And I feel that personally. I don't think I had this as an undergrad, but I caught it when I came to grad school. So no matter what I'm doing, if I'm like watching Netflix or whatever, I just have this like monologue going on in the back of my mind. I should be working on my dissertation.
Yes.
So,
Oh, gosh, the dissertation, yeah.
yeah.
I should be doing dissertation. I should, yeah, that's exactly right. Absolutely. Okay. Any questions or thoughts? All right, so did you guys know that there are different types of stress? So there actually are good stressors and not so good stressors. We call the good stress eustress. Did you guys know that positive things that happen in your life can actually cause stress? Like getting married, having a baby, getting into graduate school, right? Getting a new job, getting the internship that you couldn't wait to go to, starting graduate school, all of these things. They're positives in your life. Well, maybe they're positives. We assume them to be positives, right? But they are still stressors. And oftentimes we don't recognize them as being stressors. You know, I think relationships, for as important as they are to us in managing our stress and being healthy, they're also very stressful. And so learning how to manage relationships in a healthy way is an invaluable skill that we have to all develop, every one of us. Okay? You jump in if you have any thoughts.
And I also think like even if stress isn't necessarily fitting into this category, all stress can be adaptive in some way. I don't know if you've ever seen like the performance curve, but a little bit of stress, you'll actually perform better on a test or like in sports. But if you have too much stress, then your curve starts to come down. So it's a good thing to have some stress sometimes, you know, because it like excites you, but just learning how to keep that at a manageable level.
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
In fact, I've had clients that I work with that I like to stress them out because they're so relaxed that they don't go to class. They don't do their homework, right? I mean, that seems weird to you guys as graduate students, but there are undergraduates, when you start teaching classes, or if you already do, you're going to recognize this. They're not stressed enough. We need to get them more stressed so that they can get up, get out of bed, do their homework. That's exactly right. Great point. Thank you. Distress is what we are trying to avoid. We don't want to be distressed. Distress is not a good thing. It causes us to act in ways that we don't normally act. It causes us to feel in ways that we don't want to feel. So I want to show you guys a clip of what can happen when you become overly distressed. Can you click on that for us? I'm going to date myself again here with this video. Hopefully it works. There we go. So this is how not to handle your distress.
Do you want me to start over?
This is good right here.
What is making this sound? Oh, I've got two windows.
Huge drives and his amazingly bizarre behavior. He's on the 17th green right now, having a little trouble closing out his day.
Having fallen self has its own energy, or life force, if you will. Its natural environment is the home. What you said. His bags are back. He's got it everything. Bring him to the airport. Send him home. Just send him home. Time to go home here, Bob.
That's your home. Are you too good for your home? Answer me. Suck my white ass, Bob.
Okay, so this is an example of what happens when we get too distressed. Maybe Happy's example is a little bit extreme. But the truth is, think about it in your own lives. When you get overly distressed, do you start to engage in behaviors like Happy? Maybe not to the same extreme, right? But think about it for a second. Do you get irritable? Do you get agitated easily? Does everybody piss you off? Right? You're driving down the street, somebody cuts you off, you start screaming like Happy, right? I mean, when we're distressed, this is the kind of thing that happens. We often engage in behaviors we wouldn't normally engage in. We lose sometimes the ability to regulate our emotions in the way that we normally do. Any thoughts?
Nope, I've definitely noticed irritability.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Is it not?
Okay. There we go. So what are the things that cause us the most stress? I want you guys to think about for yourselves, what are the things that cause you the most stress? Whether it's eustress or positive stress or distress. What are those things, can you pinpoint in your life right now? What's causing you to be most distressed in your life? For some people, it's the time crunch. Do I have enough time for myself, for school, for work, for church activities, whatever it might be? What about finances? That's a huge one, especially in grad school. We talk about eating ramen noodles, right? That becomes a staple of your diet. Yep, she knows all about it. It costs 10 cents, right, on sale. So some of you, oftentimes as graduate students, have families, children, a partner, or you're a dog mom or a dog dad, right? You've got responsibilities at home. And then relationships. Relationships can cause a lot of stress too if they're not healthy, if they're not where you want them to be. Something that is really important for you as a graduate student, and also for us as psychologists, is this idea of burnout. That over time, if you are exposed to distressful events over time, consistently, then at some point you burn out. And the reason why I add this slide in here is because of this right here, striving toward unrealistic expectations, whether those expectations are internally or externally derived. Some of you may have these unrealistic expectations, both internally and externally derived, right? We hear about it sometimes in the counseling center that you may have an advisor who expects a certain number of hours out of you, or expects you to complete something in an amount of time that's not realistic, or it doesn't feel realistic to you with all of the other things that you have in your life. Regardless of whether they are realistic or not, a prolonged exposure to this without getting the help that you need or helping yourself can result in burnout. At that point, what happens when you're burned out?
Just don't do anything.
You just don't. You can't. It's almost like you're paralyzed by it. Sadly, working in the mental health field, I see this a lot. I see it a lot with folks, especially that work in like mental health institutions, where they are subjected to long hours working with very difficult patients. And over time, there's no self-care. There's no encouragement to take care of yourself in those positions oftentimes, and they get burned out. And at that point, they don't care anymore. They lose empathy, right? You guys know what empathy is. And it's not hard to lose empathy once you've burned out. So be careful with burnout. Here are the early warning signs that we just talked about and what Happy demonstrated so effectively for us. Irritability, tense muscles, feeling tired and worn out. Getting sick. Did you guys know that getting sick frequently is a sign of being overly distressed? Because your immune system gets compromised. Having a hard time sleeping. Did you guys know that anomia, or having trouble remembering words and things, is a sign of distress? Pretty commonly. So you're sitting there, you're having a conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden, I don't remember for the life of me, it's on the tip of my tongue. Relying on alcohol and drugs or food to cope. Another sign that maybe we're in trouble. All right, any thoughts?
No.
Okay, any questions or comments? Have you guys seen people who are burned out? Have you worked with people who are burned out? Yeah. It's not a great thing, right? So how do we avoid burnout? What do we do? A huge part of this is you becoming more self-aware. You have to become more self-aware than Happy Gilmore, right? You have to recognize your behavior and what it is and what's happening. If you don't recognize it in yourself, then other people will start to recognize it in you. They'll say things to you like, man, you're so ornery lately. What's your problem? Why are you so ornery all the time? Why are you so moody, right? You don't seem like yourself anymore. Why don't you seem like you just don't, it doesn't seem like you're yourself anymore. You seem tired and overwhelmed. So being able to identify it in yourself is really important. And then if you can, if it's possible to identify that stressor, being able to either get rid of it or change it. I know that that's not always easy, but oftentimes we can adjust what we're doing to handle it better. The other part of this that is really important is being able to alter your own perception of what's happening, what's going on. Sometimes it's really hard to do that on your own, and you need someone to help you to do that, right? Whether that's a partner or a loved one, or sometimes a therapist can help you to alter your perception of what's actually happening. And then learning some new skills to manage that stress. And we're going to talk about what some really easy, simple to use skills are, and some places that you can get resources. Because there are actually a lot of resources available to you guys, even here as graduate students.
Yeah, there are so many free resources that I didn't know about when I was an undergraduate. Because we do counseling at the counseling center, student health, there's a community clinic over there, there's workshops all the time that CAPS is putting on a variety of topics. So there's a lot available to you.
A lot, more than maybe you know.
Yeah.
And for our folks who are coming from a distance on the computer there are also things available to you as well. Counseling Center provides mental health services for regional campus students. So if you take courses on a regional campus, we reach out to you, provide those services via Zoom. You guys know what Zoom is? It's like a confidential Skype. So it's really kind of a cool thing. But some really quick, easy things that you guys can do. If you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, my guess is your body is on high alert. That fight or flight system is kicked in, and you're feeling tense, anxious. Maybe you're breathing shallow breaths. Maybe your hands and palms are feeling sweaty. There's a lot of different ways that you can recognize that stress physiologically in yourself, feeling irritable. But some really quick, easy things that you can do are some breathing techniques. Anybody in here done relaxation breathing before? Good, some of you have. Fantastic. What about progressive muscle relaxation? Another fun one. You probably don't want to do this in the middle of class necessarily, but you can do it at home and practice it. Meditation is a great one, and visualization. So just by the show of hands, how many in here have a smartphone? Everybody almost. That's not even surprising to me for some reason. On your smartphone right now, you can download a free app. It's called Stop, Think, Breathe. That will give you immediate access to all of these things. Stop, Think, Breathe. Download it now. What's that?
Stop breathing.
What'd I say?
Stop, think, breathe.
Oh, thanks.
I
Yeah.
mean, you can probably still find it either way.
Yeah. But it is a great app. It's super easy to use. It helps you to gain self-awareness. So there's an assessment part where it asks you, how are you doing today? And it allows you to kind of self-assess. How am I doing today? How am I feeling? And it will give you some recommendations about what you can do to help manage your stress in that moment. Some of those will be breathing techniques. There's progressive muscle relaxation on there. There's mindfulness meditation, which is fantastic, and even some visualization. If you deal with depression, another great app that you can get is called the Virtual Hope Box. One of my personal favorites. I use it all the time. And if the reason why it's great for depression, because sometimes with depression, we end up having suicidal thoughts. And that Virtual Hope Box gives us a number of easy tools to use to help us to manage some of those thoughts and feelings. Any questions about some of these quick interventions? No? So, self-care. Remember Freud, you got to find balance. When you're in graduate school, how do you find balance? Because in my mind, if we're talking about the balance between work, love, and play, for you guys, work is encapsulated in your graduate school pursuits. And maybe you work in addition to that, making money or doing other things. Those things, we can see what we have to do as far as work is concerned, for the most part. That's usually taken care of as a graduate student. But what about play? How do you incorporate play into your life as a busy graduate student?
Who's been successful at this? Do you have some tips for others?
Uh-oh, that's concerning. Yeah?
So one of the things, like, as I'm in an engineering field, but like one of the things I like to do, I like to create a break. So I'll always take a break throughout the day, like an hour, to sit down, have a coffee, and just write.
That's awesome. That's great. That's perfect. That's a perfect example. Any other examples? Yeah,
I
please.
think sometimes it's just choosing to do it regardless of how big your to-do list is. And I make myself be productive. I get up early and get things done so that more in the evenings I can give myself that right to do fun things. So if I'm productive for so many hours, so I guess incentivizing, is a good way as well, because I'm a lot more productive. I spend less time on Facebook and things when I'm like, well, if I get this much done in these 3 hours, then tonight I can go to do whatever. So
I do the same thing. You see, out of graduate school, I say if I get all my paperwork done, I can watch the Jazz games tonight.
Yeah.
So I have to do that with myself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I end up missing out on those opportunities to relax and to do things that I enjoy. So other things. Yeah.
You have someone else hold you accountable, in you know, a significant other or a good friend that will say, hey, you made a date with yourself tonight.
Perfect.
And hold you to it.
That's great. Yeah. Bringing other people in is a really great way to make sure you do that.
Yeah, I just keep like a recurring schedule. So in the winter, every Sunday, I'm snowboarding. It's just happening, like, no matter what's happening. It's just something that I've set up as a habit. And then I go rock climbing one night a week, and I have a partner, so I'm really accountable. And I also go with friends to go snowboarding too. So it's like if I back out, then
They call you out on
yeah,
it.
exactly.
That's good. I do the same thing, but with basketball. I love basketball. It's like my favorite thing in the world. I love to watch it. I love to play it. It's great for me. And when I was in graduate school, my supervisor confronted me about what I was doing for myself. I really couldn't tell him that I was doing anything. At that time in my life, I was not doing anything that I enjoyed. And so he said, you've got to do something else. You've got to find a way to do something for yourself. And so what I did is I just got on the internet and looked for people who were playing basketball in the area where I was living, and found that there was these guys playing in this gym a couple of nights a week. So I just showed up one night and said, hey, can I play? I'm like, sure, I'm playing. This is just an open gym. So I started doing that on a weekly basis. And then later on, I was doing it more with the church group. And now, even now that I'm graduated, I'm not any less busy. And so I still have to keep doing that. And I've got a pass at the local natatorium where I go play every morning, Monday through Friday, from about 5:45 till almost 7 o'clock. And for me, it's great. It keeps me balanced. It keeps me energized. Yeah, it sucks getting up early because I go to bed late too. But I find that if I don't go, I feel even worse. So for you guys, you've got to find what your snowboarding is, or what your basketball is, or what your creative writing is. It can come in any shape or form. It doesn't have to be like what we do. But you got to find something for yourself. Okay. In addition to that, Amanda was saying earlier about exercise and eating right. She's absolutely right. When we don't do that, especially for you guys who are in graduate school, you guys have to be able to use your brains. If you don't have the fuel to use your brain, I can tell you, how many times have you had this happen? Where you're not sleeping well enough, you're not eating, and you just can't focus and concentrate. Me too. And then at that point, you got to step back and say, okay, what am I not doing right here? Because if I can't focus and concentrate, everything goes out the window. So we got to figure out how we can make sure that we're healthy enough to be able to do that. Time management's really important, being organized. If you have ADHD, you know that that's really hard to do. Or if you're really anxious, sometimes it's really hard to organize yourself, because when we're anxious or when we have ADHD, the frontal lobe sometimes gets disrupted. And it's harder for us to do those organizational activities and make sure that we set out our time in a way that's really effective. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll feel that I'm really busy and I want to work through lunch, but when I've done that before, then I start crashing later in the day and I actually don't get as much work done, even though I work through lunch, as if I just take a lunch break and then I can be really efficient when I come back. So I've just noticed those patterns for myself over time.
I agree completely.
It's my 4th year in grad school, so.
So you've got a good sample size.
Yeah.
to draw from.
Yeah.
Okay. This idea of resilience. We want to build resilience in ourselves. We want to become resilient people. Oftentimes we think, oh, this is something that people are just born with. They're just born resilient. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not true. That you can actually develop resilience. Making an honest effort towards it can help you to become more resilient. Resilience is when we can adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant stress. All of those apply to grad school, right? Every one of them. There is adversity, there is trauma, there is tragedy, there are threats and significant sources of stress in grad school. I know, because I've been there. I know what it's like. So being able to adapt well in the face of those things is not always easy. It does require that we work and that we make ourselves healthier. Resilience is not extraordinary or extraordinary, however you want to say it, right? It is an ordinary thing. Common people develop resilience or are resilient. You don't have to be a superhero to be resilient. Being resilient doesn't mean that you don't experience difficulty or distress, right? One of the great things that I think we learn about in the field of psychology is this idea of acceptance. We have to be able to accept that graduate school is hard. We have to accept that we're not going to always enjoy it. We have to accept that we're going to have to maybe tailor our lives in a way that we don't want it to be for the time being. Being able to accept things as they are doesn't mean that you like it, doesn't mean that you always want it to be that way, but being able to accept it can help us to be more resilient against all of the difficulties and the inevitable stress and sometimes pain that comes up with being in graduate school. Emotional pain and sadness are common, right? They're just common in life. We're going to have those things. So how do we make ourselves more resilient to those things? So, like I said before, resilience is not a trait that you either have or don't have. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed. All of us can do that. One of the primary factors, one of the most important things in developing resilience doesn't have anything, well, it does have to do with it, but it also has to do with having other people in your life. So Freud was onto something all those years ago. Freud recognized the importance of having people in our lives. Every single one of us in here needs to have somebody else in our lives, whether that's a romantic partner, whether it's a best friend, whether it's a parent, whether it's a sibling, a dog, right? Yes, it does apply. Absolutely, it applies. Having caring and supportive relationships is essential to being resilient. One of the coolest studies that I ever read on resilience was Emmy Werner did a study of children over in Hawaii, and she looked at a longitudinal study over 40 years of what made kids resilient to different things. And you know what she found? What was the one thing that made those kids resilient to things like drugs and mental illness, chronic mental illness, delinquency? You guys know? What's that? Good friend? Yes, pretty much. That they had one person in their life who was in their corner, one person who supported them. So whether that was a good friend, whether it was a parent or a grandparent or a church leader or someone, they had that one person that was there to support them through thick and thin. And that's what the one common factor was, which I found to be really interesting and fascinating. Some other things. The research shows that marriage to a stable partner, or it doesn't have to be marriage, but a companionship, a stable partner. Interestingly, conversion to a religious faith that provided structure, community, and an assurance of salvation. I thought that was really interesting. That people who had converted to that faith and found that became more resilient. Near-death experiences. Would you have imagined that would make you more resilient? I thought that was interesting too. And then also formal psychotherapy. And what you guys should know, again, to reiterate, if you need formal psychotherapy, that is provided here. That's provided under your student fees. You wouldn't have to pay anything for it if you come to the counseling center.
And we have a graduate student support group, so you could even be around other graduate students.
Yes, and it's one of our more popular groups. It's a great, great group. Okay, some other factors, things like the capacity to make realistic plans and then take steps to carry them out. So being realistic in your plans. Oh man, when I started grad school, I had all these plans. I wanted to be like Freud, right? I wanted to publish this dissertation that was going to go on and change the world. And my advisor said, Justin, just finish the damn thing. Okay, you're right. I just got to finish it. It doesn't have to be my life's work. Just finish the damn thing is what he said to me. That's right. Having a positive view of yourself and confidence in your own abilities, right? You guys wouldn't have made it into graduate school if you didn't have ability, if you didn't have confidence in yourselves. Remember that. Right? Being able to communicate and problem solve. All of you guys, you wouldn't have got into graduate school if you didn't know how to problem solve. It's an essential skill. So, and then the capacity to manage strong feelings and impulses. And this is where it gets tough for a lot of us, right? Because strong feelings are hard to deal with. If we can learn how to manage them, if we learn how to manage our impulses, we can be that much better off. All right, making connections. We got a lot more just that you can kind of look at. If you guys want a copy of my slides, just email. Do they have your email address? Can I email you?
I can put it online.
We can put it online. Perfect. We can put it online because we have a few more things I want to talk about before we wrap up. But I think just these are some basic things you can do. help improve your resilience. Learning from the past. I've been through difficult things in the past and I can do it again. So again, reminding yourself, you've done hard things. You've done hard things to get to where you're at now. You're doing hard things now and I can do more. Being flexible. Allow yourself to experience these emotions. Don't be afraid of your emotions. You're gonna be okay. No one ever died from their emotions, what they experience. Yes, they are uncomfortable, but you can do it. And then finally, being able to rely on others and yourself, remembering that you are able to do this. Okay. This is one of my most favorite quotes by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She said, the most beautiful people that we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people don't just happen. The way we become like that is through what you're going through, the difficulties and challenges of life. Okay. That's how we become resilient. All right. Any thoughts about resilience and how we get there, and how this can maybe be applied to you as graduate students? What do you think? Anything in that? You want to add?
Well, what are some of the take-home points that you guys have from today? And do you think, have we convinced you that it's important to take breaks and take care of yourself? Are you still on the fence about that? Because I know I have to regularly have someone give me permission to do that. And luckily, I'm in a psychology program, and I've noticed a lot of my friends that are not don't get reminders to do self-care. But I'm very blessed because in all of my classes and with my advisor, they're frequently asking me what I'm doing to take care of myself and encouraging that. And so I feel with that permission that I'm getting all the time, then it will prompt me to do those things. But I've noticed people in engineering get a very different message than what I'm getting, which is yeah, sleep in your office tonight so you can finish this thing. Yeah. So I feel very blessed in that. So if you need someone to remind you of that from time to time, maybe cue someone in or come visit us at CAPS. Yes. We'll give you permission.
On that note, here are some things that you can do as far as support for yourself. Individual counseling at CAPS, we do couples counseling at CAPS, we do group counseling, we do workshops, we do one-time consultations. We do currently have a wait list, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't come in. Come in, do the one-time consultation, and we'll give you some suggestions about what you can do right now until we can get you in to see someone individually, or until you can do the grad student group next semester. There's also a really great, another great resource, which is this, the CBS lab, which stands for something behavioral, contextual behavior science lab, which is located in the psychology department. If you go to this website, it's really great because it provides a number of self-help kinds of things that you can do. If you don't want to come into CAPS, you can do them on your own. They're really great, and a lot of them are based in a theory of treatment called ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy. So they're really great resources. Any other thoughts about that?
No, that's just a really great website.
It really is.
Our workshops are really great too, so I'm going to put in a plug for them. We have all sorts of workshops from relationships to adaptive perfectionism, which probably would work well for all of you guys.
Yes. Okay, some other USU resources: Psychology Community Clinic. We do have a marriage and family therapy clinic, if you didn't know, which is just down at the bottom of Old Main Hill. The ARC, actually they changed that now, right?
Yeah, it's the
Success Center. Yeah. They help with things like test anxiety or other kinds of issues that might come up. If you have a disability, don't hesitate to go to the DRC. They're really great. Even if you are a graduate student, you can still receive accommodations if you have a disability, and the Family Life Center. So there's some other ones that are off campus. The Child and Family Support Center is great if you have children. If you're LDS Family Services is a really great one that oftentimes your bishop can refer you to. And then the Family Institute in Utah is another really great one. If you have a history of experiencing domestic violence or traumatic events, CAPSA is one that I forgot to put on there. It's also really great. And if you just type in Logan CAPSA, it brings up their website. And they offer therapy and all kinds of great resources for free.
Yeah, we also have a Savvy
And
office on
Savvy.
campus.
Okay, so we want to save a few minutes for questions. And we also had a couple of questions. Do you have? Do you guys have any questions while Amanda's getting those other questions that will be known to us? Or concerns or thoughts or complaints? Just ready to move on to something different? Okay.
So you want me to read a few of these? Okay, so we have some questions that were submitted, and this will spark some discussion. So someone said that faculty advisors can be a source of and inoculation against stress for graduate students. So you think faculty advisors have a responsibility to make sure their graduate students are emotionally healthy? And if so, what specific things should they do and what resources should they provide?
What do you guys think? This is a challenge, I think, as psychology students, because oftentimes our advisors are psychologists, and so they do value these things maybe more so than there is in other fields. But I think regardless, I think that advisors should be aware of these things and should be more supportive. And I know that it's not always the case. So what are your guys' thoughts about that?
I know that personally, when I feel like someone's giving me like a laundry list of things to do and isn't providing positive reinforcement when I accomplish those things, I do kind of get burned out. And so, I mean, I notice a difference between like my advisor and some of my committee members and who is more positive in like letting me know like, oh, you did that good. Just like throwing a little bone just like helps. And it's not like a sitting down and like serious, like how are you doing talk. It's just a little something to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you make a really great point about like your advisor doesn't have to be the sole person that you can get those things from. So if you have someone on your committee or someone else in your department that you've taken a class from and they are more positively reinforcing or more supportive, like trying to reach out to that person too. That way you don't just rely on only your advisor for those things, because often advisors can kind of fail to do those things.
I know we've had extreme cases where advisors are abusive. And we've had to have, at times, we've had some of our psychologists or therapists actually have to be a support in the sense of helping that student figure out how can they report the abusive behavior. Because I do know that sometimes grad students get taken advantage of in ways that are inappropriate. And so, you know, if those things are happening and you're not being supported, you're not feeling supported, there are places to get that support and to get help and to trying to figure out, well, what's the best way that I can, you know, stay in graduate school, graduate, but also maybe improve my situation. And we're happy to help you guys with that if you come in and see us.
So what should you do to keep yourself motivated on what you're doing? What strategies do you have to stay focused?
Do you feel like we answered that?
I think this is, for me too, a really dynamic process where, like, I haven't just achieved motivation like forever. So unfortunately, and that's like the one thing I can't do for my clients too, because sometimes I'll like teach them skills and they'll struggle to like find the motivation to practice them outside. And I'm like, I wish I could give you that. That's the one thing I don't have. But yeah, just realizing that sometimes I have to work harder at that and being forgiving of myself. Like if I'm having a rough week or a rough month or sometimes even a rough semester, like so, if you're working on your PhD, you're in here for the long haul. If you're working on your master's, there's a little bit more of a sense of urgency to get things done in 2 years. But since I'm here for 5 years in internship, I try to be forgiving if I kind of have a rough semester and just know that I can make it up later. And so just being like flexible in my goals too, and being able to kind of like back deadlines sometimes and just be patient with myself and realizing that at this point I've been in school for 25 years, so it's hard.
Yeah, it's a long time. Remember, yeah, please.
I just think saying no to things is a big deal in being motivated, because if you say yes to too many things, even the things you enjoy, you're not going to be motivated to do because you just have so much to do. So I found if I can say no to things that I really know that someone else can do and that aren't important necessarily to get done right then I'm a lot better at getting the things done I need to do.
Great point. Any other
Yeah.
thoughts?
On that note, one of the therapists at CAPS once said that if you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and often it's yourself. So I remind myself of that all the time, because if I say yes to another project, I'm, depending on how big the project is, like I've said no to myself a lot of times if it's like a really extensive project.
That same therapist also said,
Do you know who it is?
yes, I do, said that, now I just lost it, but she said, oh, she said, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Luann?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
a good one.
Yes, it's my favorite.
Leanne
one.
is very wise.
She is extremely wise.
She teaches or does a stress and anxiety management for if you ever want to get some more wisdom and stress.
Yeah, she's
skills.
great. She really is great. I think one of the ways to increase motivation is to find the balance. It's a lot easier to work on stuff you don't want to work on when you've actually taken time for yourself and you're not completely stressed out of your mind. It's a lot easier to find yourself motivated and wanting to do the things that you enjoy when you make sure that you have enough time for yourself. So my advice for those looking for motivation is to make sure that you have the balance between work, love, and play, because when you do, you're going to be much more excited about doing the stuff that maybe you wouldn't have been excited about before. I know that is very true for me in my own work at the counseling center and in my private practice, that if I'm rested and take time for myself, I look forward to doing my work because I enjoy my work. So I think you'll find that too, but when I'm stressed out and I'm overwhelmed and I'm not taking time for myself, the last thing I want to do is any kind of work.
So another question is how to get back in the swing of things if you've had a period of time where you haven't been very productive. How do you get yourself motivated again?
It's like the eternal dissertation question, right?
Yeah.
You take a month off, it's like starting all over.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I struggle with this like every semester after having a break. It's how do I get motivated to start working on things again, get back in the swing.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
If I allow myself to celebrate little successes, and maybe it's just, hey, you formatted your paper today. Win. Then acknowledge that and see those successes in order to kind of propel you forward. Bigger picture.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and that's a good point because I am often like really strategic about what my like level of motivation is. So on days when I'm really struggling, I'll do something like formatting or like I'm like, okay, I'll make my reference list or whatever today because that doesn't require as much brain power. But like, you know, doing like tackling the lit review or something, it's a lot harder. Or I can just like, if I'm at that point, you know, work on my methods, that's a lot easier. So I'll try to be really strategic and save the like bigger tasks for days that I'm doing better.
So as you guys have probably already realized, I really like it. So this reminds me of another movie. You guys have seen What About Bob? Right? No. Oh, you got to see it. What About Bob is with Bill Murray, and he's a patient of this famous psychiatrist. And his whole, you know, mantra is baby steps. And I think it applies too to graduate school, that we can't accomplish everything in one day. And sometimes it is just baby steps, doing something little, getting yourself going. Because sometimes if we just get ourselves going, then we can, oh, okay, now I can do this. Now I can move on from just the reference page to maybe working on a body or the text. But in those moments when you've gotten away from it and you see this huge project, it's so overwhelming that you're just like, forget it. I'm going to go do something else. But baby steps oftentimes help us to just do a little bit, get us going, get us back into the swing of things again. effective way of getting this going. Well, I think we're out of time. Were there any other ones that we need to
No, they were all,
Okay.
the last few were all about motivation
Okay.
and focus.
Common
Common
theme.
problem. So
Yeah.
know you're not alone if you're struggling with that.
Well, thank you for having us. If you have any questions after this, don't hesitate to contact us. If you type in USU Counseling and Psychological Services, brings up our website, find our phone number there, or you can email us, justin.barker@usu.edu. We're happy to support you in any way we can. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name's Emily James, and despite all of the silly things that are listed on the title, I do lay down on the floor a lot, and I do think I'm a pretty patient person. But I'm a communications specialist for the Project Management and Communications team in the Office of Research and Graduate Studies, as well as being a Master of Arts candidate in the Department of English. And one of the things that I really appreciate about what I do for PMC is I get to manage a bunch of students, and I feel like I really get to be an advocate for what people often talk about work-life balance, which I think is a really important start, but I'm more of an advocate of work-life integration. And one of the things that I've done personally and that we've done in our team is we spent time thinking about our personal values and what it is that we value as individuals affect all aspects of our lives, because the person that you are as a graduate student is not really that different than the person that you are when you are not a graduate student. And a lot of times I think that we feel stressed when we're asked to value different things in different contexts. So what we have for this 30 minutes is an exercise for us to think about how it is that we're spending our time and how that translates into our values, and maybe define them more clearly if you guys want to hang out with me for a bit. And what I found about them is it makes me know what it is that I need to be prioritizing. And at times when I feel stressed out, it gives me a framework to be able to say, well, maybe this is why it is that I'm stressed out. And that in revisiting this periodically, I tend to recognize how it is that I've grown in different ways. So for the sake of, usually this is a 4-part exercise, but I'm gonna try and group together parts 1 and 2 just for the sake of time. So if you look on those little worksheets that are paper clipped together on your desks, the first page is asking. So it asks you to list how it is that you spend your time. And I'll go through part 1 and 2, and then we'll take 10 minutes to actually do this. So when you're asking how it is that you spend your time, if you decide you want to do part 1, how it is that I approach this is I approach this in broad categories. So there are kind of 5 ways in which I exist in the world. I exist as Emily, communication specialist who lays on the floor in the office. I exist as a graduate student. I exist in my relationships in my community. I exist in terms of self-care, and then I have basic necessities like I need to shower and do my laundry and eat, on a good day. But instead of just listing the general things, I find it's really, really helpful to break out all of the things that happen in those things. So for myself, I'm a part of the Cache Valley Sangha, which is a Buddhist meditation group, and having a daily meditation practice is really important to me. I try and make sure that I exercise 2 times a week. I need time outside. I need to cook and eat good meals. I need to sleep. And then one of the things that I do is every morning I get up and I read 1 poem, because I decided that as an English student, that gosh darn it, during graduate school, I was going to read 1 thing that I wanted to read. And a poem seemed like a manageable goal. So if when we take the break, you want to do this, this is kind of the hierarchy of how it is that I would think about how it is that you divide up your time. And when you do this, I would apply some tags. So whether this is what kind of goal this is achieving, whether it's personal development, professional development, whether it's educational, whether it's a creative outlet. Maybe, unlike me, you're an extrovert and it's like really important that you get a lot of social time. And so like going out to parties is like solving some great need, bless you, if that is the human that you are. And then designate whether it's something that you have to do or something that you choose to do, and placing either a plus or a minus next to it based on whether you like it or not. Because there are things that we have to do that we find we end up enjoying, and there are things that we choose to do that we don't necessarily enjoy, but we do them for some sort of reason. So an example would be like, I'm in graduate school, it's educational, it's something that I've chosen to do, mostly I like it. For one of my classes, I have to write a braided essay, which is, it's a form, well, it doesn't matter what it is. It's a particular form of essay. It's educational. It's something, it's a form that I wouldn't have just chosen to write in, but it's proven to be really valuable. Sometimes I don't get enough sleep. It's educational. It's still something that I choose to do, but you know, it's not so great, you know, so things like that. The second way that you can think about your time is that part 2. And I would actually suggest going back and doing both of these things, even though we probably won't have time to do them both now. So the other way that you could think about it is you could ask yourself, what am I doing? How am I spending my time? Who am I spending my time with that makes me happy? It makes me feel at ease or authentic. Or you could ask those same questions, how are these things making me feel frustrated, angsty, tired, or inauthentic? And then I think it's really valuable to like put reality aside for a minute and say, obligations aside, time constraints aside, resource limitations aside, what does my ideal life look like? And then when you're doing this, think about why it is that you feel this way, whether it's an internal or an external factor that's affecting this. So here are 3 examples for me that you can read to sort of inspire you. I milk cows a couple of times a month up at a farm. It seems like a really random thing that I do, but it's really important to me because it allows me to engage in a simple, tangible, physical task, and it keeps me connected to a supportive community and asks me to slow down. So we're gonna take like 10 or 12 minutes to just brainstorm how it is that we spend our time and how it is that that makes us feel. And so you can either do that for part 1 or for part 2, or if you're just like crazy more in touch with yourself than I am and you can get through both of them in 12 minutes, go for it. And then we'll come back and we'll move on to the next parts of things. So basically this is just a little bit of time that you set aside where you can be a little self-reflective and do a little bit of organization. As you guys were doing this, were you at all surprised by how it is that your time is actually allocated, as opposed to how it is that you think it's allocated or might want it to be allocated? I know that for me, spending time with friends and people that I care about is really important, and when I actually sit down and write how much time I spend on that, I'm disappointed. Okay, so this is something I would encourage you to spend more time on, but just for the sake of time, let's move on to the next part. So on part 3, this is kind of identifying what some of our values might be. There, you'll see there's a big long list of words of things that it is that you can value. And so we're just gonna take like 5 minutes. It's gonna be like really intuitive to just like off the cuff, put a check mark next to 20 or 25 of the things that resonate as things that you value, that either capture things that you listed you spent your time on, or things that it is that you feel like you value. And don't think about it. It's not about what you should value. It's not about what you're supposed to value. It's just the instinctual things. Okay, I'm gonna give you the next step. So when I did this, the first time I put this presentation together, it was over the summer. And these were the 20 or so things that I felt like were important to me. Though it wasn't competitiveness, it was actually compassion. So, you know, anyway. And I actually did this again before in like preparing for this, and it's interesting because my off-the-cuff reactions of what it was that I valued ended up being different. Some of them ended up being the same, and some of them ended up being different. But what I want for you to do now is to take the list of things that you selected as resonating to you and take them and group them together as like values. So I gave you a box with 4 squares. Maybe they fit into 4 squares, maybe they fit into 3 squares, maybe they fit into 5 squares, maybe they fit into 9 squares. I'm not going to impose upon you how many groups of values it is that you should have. We'll put them together into like groups. And then after as you're putting them together in like groups, the thought is that how it is that they are grouped together informs the larger value. So that there might be an umbrella value, maybe captured by one of the words in the group, or maybe it's something different. So for me, when I grouped these together, I came up with 4 overarching values. So let's see, health came out of that box and compassion came out of that box. But for the bottom 2, it was kind of a different word that kind of encapsulated them. So go ahead and group them together and think about what word or overarching value might capture these sub ideas. Okay, I'm going to give you the next step. I realize it's not fair. Okay, so maybe you have them all grouped and you've magically, in 5 minutes figured out exactly what your values are. Maybe you haven't, maybe you've just got one to figure it out, maybe you need more time. But the next step in this is, and this is the part that I find really empowering and really informative, particularly when I think about how it is that I want to prioritize my time or why it is that I might be happy or unhappy or stressed out in a situation, is taking these overarching words for what it is that you've come to value and writing definitions personal to you that are custom to you. So how this worked for me was I had these, and oftentimes the words that appeared in the boxes under the core value ended up showing up in the definitions of the values that I defined myself. So for health, I said health at its root derives from wholeness. It actually does linguistically. And to be maintained as a value asks for a balance of physical, emotional, and spiritual wellness. It's a communal endeavor that accepts individuals' authenticity and acknowledge boundaries and limits. And that to me is what being a healthy person means to me and what this value means. And so I did this for all 4 of my values, and you might consider doing this for all 4 of your values, all 2 of your values, all 117 of your values. That might be hard to feel happy with. So the rest of the time is yours. We're done technically at 1:30, but we'll keep playing music while you sit here if you're just feeling really chill and you're appreciating this. If you want to lie on the floor, I'll take my blazer off and I'll lie on the floor with you. But otherwise, this is just an activity that you can take with you, and I hope that in some way it's helpful in thinking about kind of how it is that you balance your life and your time and what it is that you value as a human.